so nice to have you here for this little talk show about AI governance. And recently, we've spent a lot of time talking about model capabilities. But in 2026, it's obvious that we need to talk about organizational problems, how to integrate AI and how to govern it, how to regulate it. So here today we have an amazing panel, female founders and leaders and thinkers. I'm very excited about that. And but first I want to ask the audience, how many of you think their organization is ready for AI, like really ready for AI? Can you raise your hands? I see 2 hands.
I see more.
So that's exactly why I think this panel is important. And let me just give you a little few details about who we're talking to today, because these ladies have amazing insights. And we are going to we're going to see this problem from different angles. So Felicia Curcuru, she's a founder and CEO of Binti, and Binti brings the perspective of high-stakes AI in child welfare, where governance cannot be abstract. It can really cause some meaningful human oversight cannot be treated as optional. Then we have Daniela Braga, founder and CEO of Defined.ai, and she brings the perspective of data governance, ethical sourcing, and the infrastructure layer that trustworthy AI depends on. And finally, we have Reena Jana, head of AI research and standards for trust and safety for Google. And she brings the perspective of responsible AI at scale. So, Reena, let me start with you.
Sure.
At a company operating at Google scale and across different national and international standards and environments and governments, what does a governance framework looks like?
Thanks for that question. Also, thank you for those of you that are sitting here. I know that this panel is at lunchtime or close to lunchtime, so really appreciate your time with us today with this conversation. So in terms of AI governance frameworks and responsible AI, I know you're asking it to me from the point of view of Google, but we've been really consistent about sharing our AI governance frameworks in relation to our AI principles over the years, since those were founded in 2018. And these frameworks, while they work at Google scale, we like to share them because they work at any scale. They're really foundationally about good governance across the whole AI life cycle. So I really want to emphasize that no matter what size your company is, like the companies that you lead, and many of our peers and the frontier labs and our customers and startups who are here. So in a nutshell, again, I think I said this earlier, that these frameworks need to cover the whole AI lifecycle, starting with the human creativity and research that happens at the beginning, where all of these novel models and also safety techniques and mitigation techniques happen. So always making sure that that's part of your governance process. Having proactive mitigations in place that have been identified in this research, everything from supervised reinforcement learning, supervised fine-tuning when you start seeing things happen in research, having clear launch review processes, clear roles and responsibilities, but not stopping there. And I know this panel is really on the executive mandate for AI governance. So during that launch process, making sure that there are forums for people like you, the CEOs, the founders, other people in the C-suite, senior executives who can bring their knowledge, whatever letter comes after C. If it's marketing, if it's business knowledge, as well as technical knowledge, product knowledge, having that built into the governance process, and not stopping at launches. So also post-launch monitoring, programs for bug bounties, and finding vulnerabilities among users with incentives to give that feedback back. And then lots of work with trusted testers, scaled launches, et cetera, and then all of that feeding back into that research where we started. So I know that was a lot, a big mouthful, but these are the types of really comprehensive AI governance frameworks that are important today with the complexity of Gen AI and agentic.
Thank you. Daniela, now I'm going to ask you a question. So you're working on one of the most important parts of AI, data, and you've built a company around ethical and compliant AI data. So in 2026, why is it no longer credible for executives to treat AI as just something that like technical team can deal with?
Yeah, absolutely. I would start saying that brand reputation. I mean, if you care, like Reena is saying, no matter the size of your company, you may not care about your brand reputation in the beginning so much, but you're going to become at some point to a certain size, or your customers will care about what you're selling. And what data is, it's like it's the ingredients inside a model. No matter what you're building, even if it's an open source model, you want to be transparent about what's in there, so your customers can build on top or can use your model in an informed way with lineage, for data lineage, to understand the data lineage side of it. I don't think companies can. I mean, we've seen enough examples of lawsuits that are still going or have been settled. The biggest one last year, Anthropic against the Authors Guild, 1.5 billion. I don't think companies can anymore just ignore even settling. And settlements happen in two ways. I mean, either you work with on a subscription, on a paid subscription later on, so after the scraping has happened, and it has to be a big organization, usually to sue you. You either work on a subscription after the fact, or you settle. So I don't think this is a good marketing for any company to continuously deal with lawsuits like this. I mean, just to give you examples: Disney versus OpenAI, Warner Brothers versus Midjourney and Stability, New York Times versus OpenAI and Microsoft, Universal Music versus many others, and the Anthropic cases. I mean, it's not worth it anymore. There's a path to, there's three types of data that clients use to build their models. There's publicly available data that, unfortunately, that doesn't mean free data, but at the moment we're in, it starts to be considered crawlable. There's licensed data that you license from marketplaces like ours, closed source, curated, copyright clear, and structured data. And there's engineered data, so data that you obtain from your products in production. So once you have products in the market, you start collecting data, and with the right frameworks and clarity to your clients, you may be able to use that data, depending on the application and on whether it's a consumer or enterprise. Sometimes you cannot. So all of this requires transparency.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And Felicia have a different view on the AI oversight, because in child welfare, an AI mistake can really affect real humans' lives. So how do you see, what's your view, what executive AI oversight should look like?
Yeah, thank you. Hey, everyone. So as Ksenia said, we build AI tools in government, so in child welfare and other social services. And so what we've seen from government agency customers is that they're excited about AI. They don't want to be left behind, but they're also really scared of it and how it could be used to introduce bias or other issues for really sensitive, populations and vulnerable populations. And so what our philosophy has been, and we've now launched AI tools across about 80 government agencies, including multiple states statewide. And I think what our philosophy for governance has been is a few key things. Number one, we can train on their data, but we partner with models that don't train on their data. So we're not just passing their data over to the models, and that's important to them. And you can do that with any of the major models these days. Number two, obviously we have all the normal security, HIPAA, SOC 2, all that stuff that's really important. Number three, we're really thoughtful about how we use it. So particularly in child welfare, where social workers are making decisions of, should I remove this child, or things along those lines, they really don't want AI making those decisions. So this might vary depending on the space you're in, but for us, we try to use it in ways that can save administrative time, but we're not making decisions or recommendations in a way that people wouldn't understand. And so we one of the things we do is social workers can record meetings that they have with families that can be many hours, and we take that recording and we fill out a bunch of their paperwork for them. But we're not going to say, and therefore you should do this, right? We're going to do more straightforward paperwork. And then the other thing is there's a human in the loop, and so everything is done as a draft, and then a social worker has to review it. And there's audit trails available for supervisors and administrators. They can look back. What was the original, recording? What did the AI do? What edits did the human make, so that they can have trust in what's happening. So for us, that once I share those things, in our experience, kind of like CIOs and CTOs in government have been comfortable with that use of AI, even when they're kind of still developing their broader AI policies.
We're so early in this stage of building frameworks that it's literally like step by step, and a lot of companies just figuring it out on their own. And I wonder, because a lot of companies say they want responsible AI, they want governed AI, but and it's a question to all of you, how much do you think it's more in the abstract, more like a governance feeder, or the reality? Like, what's the reality of it?
I mean, that's a great question as we're sitting here in a theater on stage talking about responsible AI and these frameworks. I'm going to just touch on something that you brought up, which was transparency. Some of it might seem like theater, but some of it is also transparency, getting people engaged in these ideas. When we hear also about the fears, to your point, of customers being worried about the risks, these conversations, they might seem like theater, but they're real conversations, and bringing them all up can be very helpful. Mm-hmm. In terms of making it real, it's urgent. We all know this. We've seen people using all of these tools in daily life, really important workflows that you're talking about. But the good news is some of these transparent conversations have led now to industry standards. And I do want to bring those up because you mentioned them earlier as a challenge, but they also can be very helpful. They're best practices that people from companies and academia and civil society come together and reach consensus around. Some of you are probably very familiar with like the ISO, the international standard of 42001, which lays out how to develop an AI management system responsibly on an international level. It's reached that international consensus. It's published. You could even be certified against it, and even use technical standards to help prove your certification as evidence. So, yes, it might seem like theater, but these are transparent conversations that are leading to real, repeatable, and scalable standards.
Mm-hmm. From the data standpoint, I think where I see the big difference is in the types of questions that our clients ask us around the data that they're licensing, right? I mean, if you have a client that asks questions and wants to see the paperwork trail of the consents, they want to, or if we're collecting data, they are concerned about legislation in certain states, and they ask us that. or in certain countries, or in demographic participation, age range, how you advertise data collection to certain ethnicities, and all sorts of, or sexual inclination. So there's all these questions, and the questions around fair use versus, I mean, if we are licensing video content, but there is someone with a T-shirt of Nike, for example, in a documentary, it's completely unrelated to the copyright, and it's a copyright video content. Questions around what to do about this. Should we blur it? Should we? I mean, these are the right questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just add quickly that, I think, again, I come from the government lens. I think all government agencies we talk to are in the process of writing an AI policy. And I think we've actually drafted a template AI policy for them that we share. So I do think there's a role for companies to try to help provide guidance on this. And I think what we've seen is some government agencies are literally just trying to block any AI from being launched in their agency, which I think is not the right approach. And other ones are just sort of loosey-goosey, and that's also not right. So I think what we try to encourage is be nuanced and, have guidance. For example, we're not going to let recommendations or decisions be done by AI, but we will let it be used in these cases. And obviously it has to be an evolving living document as AI is moving so quickly.
Thank you. It still feels that AI governance can be overwhelming. So for people today to get something practical, what the first most important things any CEO that listens to us today or any team leader should do in the next 90 days to prepare their organization to become governed and responsible?
They should give us a call. Give us a call. We will help you with your data strategy. But also, first look at what data do you have in-house. That's the first step. And do you have the rights to use it?
That's the most messy step.
First important thing. And if you have the rights to use it, how are you going to process it to make it usable? It has to be labeled. It has to be anonymized. It has to be transformed. So that's again, give us a call for that too. Then understanding the gaps. What do you not have to make your product special and different? And that's where you go after what it's out there, ready, licensable, ready. And if it's not, which is again what we have in our marketplace, and if it's not ready because it's a niche or it requires a collection in a specific environmental device or demographic or specialty, then you have to look into a data collection. But these are all the steps you need to do before thinking anything.
And then I would just say two things. I think first, make sure you're really thoughtful about the problem you're trying to solve if you're a founder. When I first started Binti, I started it because my sister adopted and the process was difficult and I wanted to solve that problem. So it wasn't, technology and source of solution. It was a problem and how can we use technology to solve that problem? And similarly, when we were thinking about AI, we were like, well, what are problems that we see our social workers face every day and how could it be used to solve some of those pain points? And I think as you're thinking about how to use AI, make sure you're really focused on this is a problem, this is a good use case for AI, as opposed to just using AI and having it be look kind of flashy, but it's not really solving a problem. And then second of all, I think proactively about what could go wrong, right? If I'm using AI and try to make sure that your policy and your philosophy around it protects against that. And talk to customers about it, before you launch it. So when we were thinking about launching these features, we talked to customers. We were like, what do you think of this? What are your worries about it? And then we kind of shaped some of our policies around it and some of the protections that we have around that. And then when we brought it to market, it was kind of already, satisfied their concerns. So that would be a suggestion that I have as well.
Can you wrap it up for us, Reena?
Sure. Yeah. If there's one thing in the next, I think you said 90 days? 90 days. I touched upon standards. I think as a executive, it's really important to see what the consensus-based best practices are and, real guidance that is bubbling up from technical experts and policy experts, et cetera. So see what's out there from ISO, I mentioned 42001, the NIST risk management framework, of course, and then seeing what best practices companies are putting out as well and sharing, like the template that you mentioned. We have our Responsible AI Progress report that we put out a couple of months ago that's available online just to share those practices, to your point about sharing, so companies of all sizes can learn from these frameworks as they emerge.
Thank you so much. I encourage you to follow Felicia, Daniela, and Reena, because that's people who work with AI in real companies with standards, with governance of regulation, and making AI responsible. Thank you so much for listening to us.